Good afternoon, learners. My name is Atrey Sinha. I am Academic Officer English from National Institute of Open Schooling. Today we will read the poem My Only Cry by Leila Ibrahim Semaan, and this lesson is included in our Secondary English course 202 as lesson number 16. My Only Cry is a heartfelt plea for peace voiced through the innocence and honesty of a child. It focuses on the destructive impact of war, weapons, and political divisions created by adults. The central message is a powerful appeal to shut down arms factories and preserve the future of children. Before starting the lesson, let us have a look at the learning outcomes that are expected from this lesson. So, first of all, after completing the lesson, the learner state the theme of the poem, relates to the poet's fear and apprehensions about weapons, identifies the difference between blank words and rhyming words, expresses their protest against an issue, and uses adverbial antonyms. So, these are the learning outcomes that are there in this lesson. So, let us move on to the poet, that is Leila Ibrahim Semaan, the poet of this poem, short poem, My Only Cry. So, Leila Ibrahim Semaan is a poet and a peace activist. She is recognized for writing with simplicity, emotional strength, and moral clarity. When we read this poem, we can find out that this poem is written in a very simple language, and the emotional strength of the poet and the moral clarity is very much prominently reflected throughout her writing. So, her work reflects deep concern for humanity, especially the impact of war and violence on children. So, this is what about we can say on Leila Ibrahim Semaan, the writer. Now, let us move on to about the poem. What is the poem about? So, the poem is written in a serious, pleading and sincere tone, and it is reflective, emotional and urgent in mood. And this poem is written in blank verse, and Leila has used simple language, direct address and powerful imagery throughout the poem. And the poem is in a conversational tone. That means that when you read the poem, you will feel that this is a conversation between the author, between the poet and the recipient or the reader of the poem, right. So, as we already discussed that this is a serious poem, and this the mood of this poem is very much emotional and urgent and is written in blank verse in simple language, which is the speciality of Leila Ibrahim Semaan. So, let us jump to the poem and read the first stanza of the poem. So, the full title of the poem, as you can see on the slide, that My Only Cry, Close the Arms Factories. This is the full title of the poem. So, the title of the poem is My Only Cry with a subtitle Close the Arms Factories. So, let us start reading the poem. Who are you deceiving? You ask me to speak to children, but I shall also address you, the grown-ups. I am still a child. I don't know how to lie like you. So, it is a continuation. All the children of the world, O adults of the world, could not rebuild what you destroy. A better world won't be able to be rebuilt without you, the adults. So, the title My Only Cry, Close the Arms Factories expresses the central plea of the speaker to shut down the production of weapons, arms factories, that means weapons. My Only Cry implies this is the most important appeal from the children of the world. The poem starts with a question, who are you deceiving? The speaker accuses adults of pretending or lying about their actions. You asked me to speak to children. Adults want the child to talk to other children, possibly to spread peace or acceptance. But I shall also address you, the grown-ups. but the child insists on addressing the adults directly, the real decision maker. Children are not the decision makers, adults are. I am still a child. I don't know how to lie like you. So the child highlights their innocence and honesty, a contrast to adults who lie. All the children of the world, O adults of the world. So the speaker speaks on behalf of all children to all adults globally. Couldn't rebuild what you destroy. So children cannot fix the destruction caused by adult actions, especially war. So a better world won't be able to be rebuilt without you, the adults. So only adults have the power and responsibility to rebuild and make the world better. So the speaker directly addressed the adult generation of the whole world and plea to them to bring the peace and take away the violence from the universe. Let's move on to the second stanza. You know that our cries are useless in a deaf world. Now, my friends, let's not talk of friendship, peace and fellowship. These words should be spoken by adults. So, in this stanza, I repeat, you know that our cries are useless in a deaf world. So, children's pleas are ignored. The adult world chooses not to listen. Now, my friends, let's not talk of friendship, peace and fellowship. Children speaking among themselves shouldn't discuss these ideals. Adults should embody them. These words should be spoken by adults. So adults must take responsibility for promoting peace and unity, not just preach them. So this is the second stanza. Now move on to the third stanza. Enough promises, enough waiting. Come everyone, ask them to stop making arms, to stop making words breakouts, to stop telling lies. So in the third stanza, the speaker says that enough promises, enough waiting. Come everyone, ask them to stop making arms, to stop making words break out, to stop telling lies. So in this third stanza, the poet says that the child is tried to empty words and waiting for actions. So he is inviting everyone. Enough promises, enough waiting. Come everyone, ask them to stop making arms, to stop making words break out, to stop telling lies. So the speaker calls all people to action against weapon manufacturing. Actually the child speaker is tired of empty words and waiting for action for so long. To stop making words break out. So this is a plea to prevent the causes and outbreak of war to the adult generation. To stop telling lies. So adults must stop their false assurances about peace and safety. That is why the child is saying that enough promises, everything is enough. Now move on to some action please. Fourth stanza. Listen, listen carefully. We are sick. You are sick, but we are here. So the child is saying both children and adults are suffering from the effects of war and weaponry. So listen, listen carefully. We are sick, you are sick, we both are sick. Both children and adults are suffering from the effects of this rivalry, this violence. But we are here. Despite our suffering, the children are still present and speaking up. Moving on. So, in your name, we children, we ask them, close your arms factories and think about taming the winds. So, the children is here now in an open announcement. So, in your name, we children, we ask them. So, children appeal on behalf of everyone, even for adults, even on behalf of adults, to stop the violence. Close your arms factories and think about taming the winds. So, it is a direct urgent demand to shut down weapon production and channel power into peaceful, positive directions. Taming the wind symbolizes controlling destructive forces. So, the children are pleading here that to close their to control their destructive forces, and this is an urgent demand, and it will only be happen only by shutting down the weapon production and channel that power, that energy into a peaceful, positive direction. Moving on to the next stanza. Right-wing politics matter little to us. We are children. Left-wing politics matter little to us. Our life is essentially affection, but through your fault, a veil of dust lies over it. So, the children is saying that right-wing politics matter little to us. We are children. Children don't care about political ideologies. They just want peace. Left-wing politics matter little to us. So, children reject all divisive politics, whether conservative or liberal, whether right-wing or left-wing, that doesn't matter to them. They don't care about political ideologies. What they want just peace. Our life is essentially affection. At their core, children seek love and emotional safety. But through your fault, a veil of dust lies over it. So, adults have darkened and polluted this simple, loving world with the dust of destruction. And this dust of destruction is due to war, bombs, and chaos. So, this is the poem by Leila Ibrahim Semaan, and the title of the poem is My Only Cry. So, what we read in the poem, that in stanza 1, the child begins by questioning the adults, accusing them of deceiving others and themselves. Though asked to speak to children, the child chooses to speak directly to the adults, exposing their lies. The child highlights a contrast. Children do not lie like adults do. In second stanza, the child acknowledges their innocence and honesty. Speaking on behalf of all children, the child speaker tells the adult that once the world is destroyed by them, children won't be able to rebuild it. The message is clear. Adults' actions are irreversible and harmful to the future, for the future generation. In the third stanza, the speaker emphasizes that although adults have the power to create a better world, they are instead choosing to destroy it. The adults don't listen, hence it's a deaf world. Children's cries and pleas for peace are ignored. In stanza 4, the child tells fellow children to stop speaking of friendship, peace and togetherness because these are values adults need to upload. There's a tone of disappointment. The child believes these ideals should be maintained by grown-ups, not just spoken about by innocent children. In stanza 5, the child expresses frustration with the empty promises made by adults. Enough of waiting, now is the time for action. Children and adults together must demand an end to the production of weapons, the outbreak of wars and the lies that fuel them. In the next stanza, there is a plea for attention. Both children and adults are sick. Maybe it is emotionally or mentally burdened by the violence around them. The children speak on behalf of everyone and demands the closure of armed factories and a redirection of efforts toward peace. Now, the poem delivers a peaceful appeal: stop manufacturing weapons and start working on peaceful and constructive action. Taming the winds, this is a symbolic phrase, and through this phrase, the child is urging to control over destructive forces and focusing on nature and harmony instead of war. Now, in the next and final stanza, the child speaker is saying that children don't care about politics or ideologies. What they seek is love and affection. Unfortunately, adults have covered this affection with violence, symbolized as a veil of dust. And this dust represents destruction, loss of purity, innocence, and obscured hope. So that's all about the text, the poem My Only Cry. So we will now moving on to the main message that is there in this poem. So the main message of this poem is to stop manufacturing weapons, stop making war, and stop lying about peace. We will discuss this main message elaborately, but before that, let's have a short break.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने,
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो,
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर। शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बात।
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम
Welcome back, learners. So we were reading My Only Cry by Leila Ibrahim Semaan. So we have already discussed the poem. So in this poem we have seen that the child questions the adults and accuse them of deceiving the children, and of course deceiving their own selves. Though asked to speak to children, the child chooses to speak directly to the adults and expose their lies. The child highlights a contrast that children do not lie like adults do. The child then acknowledges their innocence and honesty, and speaking on behalf of all children, the speaker tells the adults that once the world is destroyed by them, children won't be able to rebuild it. The message is clear that adults' actions are irreversible and harmful for the future generation. Then the child emphasizes that although adults have the power to create a better world, they are instead choosing to destroy it. The adults don't listen, hence it's a deaf world. And children's cries and pleas for peace are ignored in this fruitless world. Then the child tells fellow children to stop speaking of friendship, peace and togetherness, because these are values adults need to uphold. There's a tone of disappointment in the voice of the child speaker. The speaker believes these ideals should be maintained by grown-ups, not just spoken about by innocent children. And this is not something to preach. These values are something that should be practiced by the adults so that the children follow them. Next, the child expresses frustration with the empty promises made by adults. Enough of waiting, now is the time for action. So children and adults together must demand an end to the production of weapons, the outbreak of wars and the lies that fuel them. Then there is a plea for attention. Both children and adults are sick, maybe it emotionally or mentally burdened by the violence around them. The children speak on behalf of everyone, demanding the closure of arms factories and a redirection of efforts toward peace. The poem delivers a powerful appeal to stop manufacturing weapons and start working on peaceful and constructive actions. So they are urging to control over destructive forces, taming the winds and focusing on nature and harmony instead of war. Children don't care about politics or ideologies. What they seek is love, affection and peace. Unfortunately, adults have covered this affection with violence, symbolized as a veil of dust. And this dust represents destruction, hopelessness, loss of purity and innocence. So this was the gist of the poem by Leila Ibrahim Semaan that is titled as My Only Cry. So the moral message that are embedded in this poem, that is, children who are the most affected yet least responsible appeal to adults to take responsibility and act with honesty, love and peace. The child in the poem doesn't believe in political ideologies, right or left. They only believe in affection, care and safety. Why a child speaks in the poem? A child represents innocence, truth and vulnerability. Unlike adults, children are honest and not corrupted by power or politics. The poet uses the voice of a child to highlight the contrast between innocence and adult hypocrisy. Then the poem is highly relevant in today's world. Many countries still build and store nuclear weapons. War and violence threaten the lives and futures of children globally. There is a growing need for global discernment, peace education and accountability from adults that is very much lacking in this world. So that's all about the moral values that are embedded in the poem. Now let's talk about the key themes that are there in this poem. So the first key theme or the major key themes that are there in the poem are protest against war and weapons, innocence of children versus deceit of adults, helplessness of children, responsibility of adults, futility of empty promises, rejection of politics, call for peace and human welfare, hope through collective voice. We will discuss all these key themes one by one. So, let us start with protest against war and weapons. The poem is a strong protest against war and the making of weapons. The child questions why adults continue to produce arms that cause destruction, death and suffering. Weapons do not protect life, instead they threaten the future of children. By asking adults to close arms factories, the poem clearly opposes war and violence. The next key theme is innocence of children versus deceit of adults. The poem highlights a sharp contrast between children and adults. Children are innocent and truthful. They speak honestly and do not know how to lie. Adults, on the other hand, know the dangers of weapons but hide the truth through lies and false assurances. This contrast makes the child's voice morally powerful. Children understand that weapons can destroy the world, but they have no power to stop adults. They can only cry, plead and appeal. That is why one of the key themes of this poem becomes helplessness of children. The poem expresses the frustration and sadness of children who realize that their voices are ignored in a deaf world. This helplessness turns their appeal into a desperate cry. The next key theme is responsibility of adults. So, the poem clearly places responsibility on adults, and adults control power, politics and weapons. They are capable of building a better world, yet they are the ones destroying it. The child reminds adults that they are answerable for the world their children will inherit. This theme stresses moral duty and accountability. Now, the fifth key theme is futility of empty promises. So, in this poem, the speaker is tired of listening to repeated promises about peace and safety. Adults talk about peace, friendship and fellowship, but their actions do not match their words. The poem shows that words without action are meaningless. Real peace requires stopping words, not making promises. It leads us to the next key theme, that is rejection of politics. So, the poem rejects both right wing and left wing politics for the children. For children, politics has no value because it divides people and leads to conflict and war. Children do not care about power or ideologies. They want love, safety and affection. The poem suggests that political divisions harm humanity. So, the next key theme is call for peace and human welfare. The phrase taming the winds symbolizes controlling destructive ideas and forces. So, the poem urges adults to use intelligence, science and energy for the welfare of humanity instead of destruction. It promotes peace, development and constructive use of power. And the final but not the least key theme of this poem is hope through collective voice. Although children are helpless individually, the poem suggests that a united voice of children can bring change. When the child speaker speaks on behalf of all children, it becomes a collective protest. The poem ends with hope that moral appeals and unity can awaken the conscience of adults and lead to a peaceful world. So, these are the key themes that are there in this poem. So, now let us move on to the appreciation section of the poem. So, as we have already discussed that this poem is written in blank verse. So, the poem lacks rhyme but maintains a rhythm. Blank verse is that type of rhyme, that type of poem, that type of verses that has no particular rhyme structure. So, this poem does not follow any rhyme. So, this poem is we can say that this poem is written in a blank verse. The voice. The strong child's perspective gives emotional weight and moral clarity. So, the child's voice is very much important in this poem. There are imagery in this poem like dust, factories and cries evoke a world suffering due to war. So, this is about the appreciation part. Now, move on to the grammar section, and in this lesson we have adverbs. What is adverb? An adverb is a word that describes or gives more information about a verb, about an adjective and about another adverb. So, an adverb is a describing word or describing word, and what does it describe? It may be either a verb or an adjective or another adverb. Right? Now, let us take some example from this poem. There is a words in this poem like listen, listen carefully. Another verse is life is essentially affection. Now, look into these two underlined words carefully and essentially. So, carefully, listen, not only listen, how to listen? Listen carefully. So, this word carefully is describing how to listen, describing the verb listen. So, this is an adverb. Also, life is essentially affection. How does the life is affection? Affection is an adjective, and this word essentially is describing that word affection, right? So, essentially is also another adverb. So, there are many other adverbs there in the whole poem. I will invite you to find them out. So, now let us move on to the at a glance what we have in this poem, what we have learned from this poem. So, we have learned that the world is gradually destroying itself by producing more and more dangerous weapons. Adults are ignoring their responsibility to protect the world and ensure a safe future. Peace-loving people often appeal to stop the race for nuclear weapons, but their appeals are ignored. It is time to stop believing that owning destructive weapons brings safety. Then we come to know that weapons cause death and destruction. They have the power to destroy everyone, even those who create and control them. Energy should be used for constructive and peaceful weapons. The focus should be on promoting human welfare, not war, not in any destructive purposes. So, that is all about the poem My Only Cry by Leila Ibrahim Semaan, and we are now recently discussed what we have learned from this lesson. So, the poem My Only Cry gives voice to the children of the world who suffers the consequences of decisions made by adults, particularly those involving war, weapons and political conflict. Leila Ibrahim Semaan uses a child's perspective to highlight the stark contrast between the innocence of youth and the hypocrisy and destructiveness of grown-ups. So, through this poem, the poet advocates for global peace and discernment, criticizes the world's obsession with arms and political power, emphasizes the need to listen to children and build a world based on love, honesty and unity. Her writing aligns with the themes of social justice, peace and responsibility that often urges readers to take moral action over remaining silent. So, My Only Cry is not just a poem, it is a global voice of conscience, urging the world to prioritize peace over power, children over weapons and truth over lies. Through the eyes of a child, the poet reminds us of our duty to create a safer, better world for our future generations. That's all about the lesson My Only Cry. We will again meet with another lesson in our next class. Till then, thank you.